Oh my gosh, I got a brand new mic for the podcast. This is episode 3 now, and I just recorded the whole thing, like the intro, the teaser, everything with my Mac. I didn't even turn it on the mic, which yeah, leave it to me. I'm not a producer, you guys. I'm just not. I'm trying my best. But anyways, listen, a little change in the format of the podcast because I talk too much. I am speaking like 30 minutes on these medical updates. The next one I have is on the cord clamping and cutting. And I think I go on like 40 minutes on that because it's so freaking interesting. And then the interviews are 40 minutes, and no one's going to sit and listen to me for more than an hour when you don't even know me. So listen, in the beginning, I'm going to do an episode with an interview. So that's going to be either a birth story or a medical expert in the birthing world. So we can learn from other people, other women's experiences. And I just think it's way more fun to fill up some of the episodes with some dialogue with someone else and not just me talking. But I've so enjoyed the birth story with Alexis and the interview with Penny. But I will continue those. It's going to be more like every other episode though. And then in between, like the next episode, I'm going to go into cord blood clamping and delayed cord clamping, things that we need to know with decisions that we're going to make in our birth plan or just in our birth in general, and as well as the latest medical update and evidence that comes out that our doctors and nurses and hospitals are reviewing and following the policies and procedures that they are going to be looking at. And I'll try to dive in and divulge in a language that you guys can understand very easily in a compressed amount of time so that you are on board and you're on the same page as everybody. I think we understand all that. I was calling it medical updates. My sister thinks it should be called moments of clarity, which I really like too. But I think after every episode, especially the interviews, I really like that name, moments of clarity. And I'm going to give you my moment of clarity. In that interview, I want to tell you the main thing that I got out of it, right? So today we are going to be able to speak to Sara. Sara is one of my oldest friends at the hospital that I worked at. She actually was on the panel that was in charge of hiring new grads, and I was a new grad. She had been there for 5 years before me. She's been there 10 years now total, and she started as a new grad too. So she's just an amazing nurse. She's an amazing woman, mother, and I was so excited to not only have her on as a guest, but I invited her to be a guest host instructor to my clients in the birth course. So she was in one of the master classes, and she went into everything that has to do with midwifery. She's a midwife now, and what that means in a labor and delivery setting. She also does work with prenatal care at the clinic, and right now she works at the hospital with high-risk pregnancies, doing NSTs and evaluations, ultrasounds, that such. Listen, I find all of that very, very exciting and interesting, but for this podcast, I had to have her on to tell me her birth story because look, I won't even go into it right now. I'm going to let her tell her story, but she always wanted to deliver in her front yard. We were pregnant at the same time. I was pregnant with Kaya in 2020, and she was pregnant with Cole, and she delivered a little bit after me. And she was always saying she wanted to deliver in her car. Like that would be, no. Oh, I gave it away. She delivered in her car. Okay. All right. I already told you, but I'll let her tell the full story. She said she wanted to deliver in her front yard. And I always thought that was pretty funny. As a labor and delivery nurse, we kind of want to just have a quick, smooth delivery. There's kind of we call it a curse that we deliver babies, but as soon as it's time for us to go in, it's going to be long, drawn out, or an emergency or whatnot. Her first baby with Cole, her delivery, was a bit long in every sense of the word, and she'll go into that a little bit. But her second was fast and furious. And that's the story that I really, really wanted to hear because I hadn't heard it. So I invited her on to tell us the birth story of her delivering her second in the car, and she'll go into it. And it's so funny, and she's such a sweetheart, and I love it. And I will give my moment of clarity afterwards. Well, here's Sara. Welcome to the Birthling Podcast, presented by My Friend's a Nurse. I'm your host, Colette Colliker, a high-risk labor and delivery nurse right here in sunny California. I'm also an OB certified specialist, birth educator, lactation expert, and mother of 2 beautiful daughters. I am passionate about guiding you through the miraculous journey of pregnancy and childbirth, using evidence and history and asking the reason why. I have some incredible medical friends and colleagues, and we're all here to help you navigate this often overwhelming birthing hospital system in the United States. My goal is to gain trust in birth, improve this system, and provide some valuable insights. Let's make this journey a little less daunting and a lot more joyful. Let's get into it. Sara, I'm so happy to have you here. We're about to do the masterclass with the clients. So every week I have a masterclass and I bring experts and professionals to the stage to host. So it's not just me talking, because I talk so much in the class. I have a whole course and modules each week. But if it's just me talking all the time, they're like, is this right what she's saying? I don't want to oily come from me. So I'm really excited to have you on today to talk to them. A little bit about you. You sent me a little bio, but I know you personally because we worked together in Glendale as labor and delivery nurses, and you have been a nurse for like 10 years and working with me in Glendale. It's like a little community hospital, about 140 deliveries a month, maybe I would say. Something like that.
We're trying to hit 150.
Okay.
Trying.
Always trying. Always trying.
Yep.
If you're pregnant and want to deliver, go to Glendale. And then you went back to school. I remember you were studying at the nurses station a lot and telling us how you went to Cal State Fullerton and you spent 3 years working on your master's, and now you are a certified nurse midwife. Yay, but you're still working in Glendale because you can't leave a good spot.
Exactly. We can go into that.
Right. And then you work with the higher risk patients that the moms that need to come in and get NST testing done. So we can touch on that and what NST tests are. But more than anything, we'll get into your own birth story because you have 2 sons. You have Cole, he's 3 years old. And what was the other son's name? I always forget. Colin.
Hayden.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's a
And
year.
then
So that's nice and fresh.
Yeah.
So I know that one was an amazing story. We'll get into that later. But first, let's get this, say hi, because I've just been speaking this whole time. and then tell us, why did you become a labor and delivery nurse? I don't even think I asked you that. And what made you want to be a midwife?
Okay. Well, honestly, I've always wanted to be an L&D nurse. I think probably back from even like in elementary school, I was obsessed with the TLC baby story show. I would come home and watch that all the time. And other than that, the only other really draw to the hospital was my dad built hospitals for a living. And so whenever we would go down to visit him, he would be like, okay, when we have a break, I'll take you over to the NICU or to the nursery and we can see all the babies. And that was like the highlight of our day. So I don't know if I got a little bit of pull into the hospital from him. But yeah, I went into nursing knowing that I wanted to do labor and delivery. So I did 2 years and graduated from an associate's program at Glendale Community College. And then luckily got right into labor and delivery and just went for it. So started working at Glendale, kind of worked my way up doing preceptor and working in triage, charge nurse, relief supervisor.
So you started there right out of school too. New grad.
Yeah.
Like me.
Yeah. As a new
cool.
grad. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Before, through nursing school, I did the certified nurse assistant, like a CNA, and went to a bunch of different floors. But that actually really helped me confirm, I want to be with women and babies. And I shout out to all the other nurses that can do the different floors, but sometimes us nurses are just born to do what we want to do.
For
So
sure.
yeah, and then I went back to Cal State LA. I did my bachelor's program there, and then decided that my goal was to have my master's. So I knew I was wanted to go back for at least my master's in nursing. And when you go back, you usually have to specialize in something. So certified nurse midwife was kind of my direction. I got into the Cal State. There's only a few programs in California. There's only 3 actually that in the Cal State system. So, or UCSF, Cal State San Diego, and Cal State Fullerton are the 3. But Cal State Fullerton has a dual program. So they have where you can become a nurse midwife and also a women's health nurse practitioner. So that was a 3-year program, and got to complete that in 2020, and then had a baby, my first baby.
You got pregnant. Yeah, you're like,
Yeah, got pregnant, was in the height of COVID, trying to finish clinical hours and working and being pregnant and being like completely covered head to toe in all the isolation garb. It was, yeah, quite an exciting time.
yeah, same. Did I deliver before you? I think we were pregnant close together.
We
You
were
got
pregnant
pregnant
at the
after?
same time for sure.
Yeah.
But Kai was born in
She was reported
December, November. Okay. And
2020.
so Cole was February.
Yeah.
So 3 months.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
cute. We have
Yeah.
video of them like first kiss at
I
like
know.
9
Oh
months.
my gosh. They're so cute together.
I love it. Okay, well, Hayden is the one I want to talk about. You have to tell
Yes.
me like the full birth story. This is a birth story
Yeah.
episode, even though we'll dive into NSTs and what you kind of do for the high risk patients because I love
Yeah.
that. But let's talk about your birth story because it's fantastic. I remember
It
you
is.
telling me when you were pregnant that you're like, I hope I deliver on the front lawn. I will always remember you saying that.
I mean, yeah, even with Cole, I was like, my dream delivery would be to walk into the hospital, like 8 or 9 centimeters, be able to labor at home, and then just like come in and have a baby. Like that's would be the dream, And it usually doesn't happen like that, but you can dream and then you just kind of go with what actually happens. I feel like I can't tell Hayden's birth story really without just touching on Cole's birth story
Do it. Yes.
because Cole, so he was my first, and my water bag broke probably, I was like 37 and a half weeks. So I wasn't expecting my water to break that early. I was thinking, oh, probably will get to 39, 40 weeks, but it broke at home in the morning. I wasn't feeling any contractions, kind of did a bunch of things at home because I, again, really wanted to try to labor at home as long as possible. But I think my water bag broke around 2 a.m. and then around 8 a.m. I still wasn't feeling any contractions. So in my, my nurse brain, I'm like, okay, now I've been ruptured. I should probably go in. I'm probably going to need something to augment. We call it augmenting when we give a little bit of medication to kind of speed up the process. So went to the hospital and pretty much did the whole thing. I was like maybe fingertip when I showed up. So at that time, let's see, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6 hours after my water bag broke, I was fingertip. They started me on Pitocin and kind of just did the whole hospital thing. I ended up being ruptured for over 24 hours. So I got antibiotics. Thankfully, I never got any signs of infection and got an epidural and then delivered vaginally, which was my end goal was at least if I can deliver vaginally, like that's the best. So yeah, so then delivered Cole. So that was in total, my water bag was broke for 26 hours, which is still great for our first baby, but it just took a long time. So flash forward to Hayden, I was not thinking, there was nothing in my mind thinking that Hayden's delivery would go super fast. So yeah, so then we can jump into Hayden's story. So Hayden, because I delivered at 37 weeks with Cole, I was like, okay, usually pregnancies kind of repeat itself in pattern. So I was like, I'm going to go out a couple weeks early from work just so, because with Cole, I was so excited to having a couple weeks off to prepare everything. And I worked up till 37 weeks and I had like a few days off and then had the baby. So I really didn't have that much time, you know?
Oh, that
So
sucks.
with Hayden, I know. So with Hayden, I was like, okay, I'm going to take off a couple weeks ahead so that if it goes the same way and I deliver around 37 weeks, then I'll be, you know, at least have a little bit of time, especially with I wanted to spend as much time with the first as I could, because that's like the end, you know, of that family of 3 beginning to be family of 4. So then, of course, when you plan things, it goes the opposite. So I was about 39 in, I think, 5 days, so almost 40 weeks. So I definitely got my weeks off that I had prayed for. And honestly, with him, I didn't really feel the day that I went into labor with him, I maybe felt a few contractions here and there, but nothing that would have like stopped me in my tracks or been like a red flag, like, oh, I think I'm going to go into labor tonight. You know, like every day when you're pregnant at like that amount of weeks, you're like, okay, is today going to be the day? Like, you know, do I have everything ready? What am I going to do today? You know, you just don't know.
You're like, is
So
this the last
anyways,
night I'm going to sleep and being pregnant?
yeah, exactly. Am I going to wake up in the middle of the night? Is my hair done? Like, you know, you're just constantly
Is
thinking.
this my
But
last meal?
yeah, seriously. So that day in particular, my sister-in-law was in town and my nephew, they all came over. So we just hung out all day long. We were running around 2 toddlers, taking them on walks, going down to get food, you know, just completely distracted. And I do remember a couple times throughout the day, like feeling a contraction, be like, ooh, my stomach's kind of tight, like, you know, but nothing really. We had dinner together. This was probably like 7:30 p.m. They left, and then Cole was like, I want to go to sleep. Never, never, ever has he asked to go to sleep. It's always a struggle to get him to bed. And so I was like, okay. I was like, I'll lay down with you. So laid him down at like 7:35, 7:40, was laying in his bed. He had literally just fallen asleep, and I felt the strongest contraction. Brought me to tears. This one contraction. And I remember being like, what was that? That was so strong. So I got out of his bed, went in and told my husband, I was like, I just had a really strong contraction. Like, I think it might happen tonight. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go to bed then. Cause if it is, I want to get a little bit of sleep. So I told him I'm going to get in the shower and we'll just go from there. So got in the shower, and I'm pretty sure that my water bag broke in the shower, because that's my only only like way of how this went so fast, because I really don't know when my water bag broke. But after I got out of the shower and I started having really strong contractions, and then I was throwing up and leaking at the same time. So sometime within that,
Oh my gosh.
the water bag was definitely broken. So my dad's here. He lives up in Lake Tahoe. He was here so that we would be able to like leave whenever we had to, and he would be home with Cole, thank goodness, because I think I texted the nurses on the unit around like 7:50 and said, I think I'm having contractions. Like, I'll probably be in tonight. Flash forward to when Hayden actually delivered 8:40. So it was probably pretty much within an hour of me thinking that I was having contractions to delivering. So at that point, so I'm in the bathroom, I'm throwing up. My husband's like coming in and out, like, are you okay? And my water bag's leaking. My dad's like in the hallway being like, what do we do? How do we help you? And so Anthony's like, I was like, we need to go. Like, as soon as I can get through a contraction and run to the car, like, you grab the bags and I'm running to the car. So between contractions, I ran to the car. Mind you, like, I had just gotten out of the shower too. So I'm like trying to put on my pants, trying to like get
You're
my
all
stuff
wet.
together, get myself together in between these contractions that literally are hitting like I felt like I just got hit by a truck. I'm like, what? I remember I have a really good friend. Her name's Haley. She's a midwife over in Kaiser. She was working, and she's like, I'll just come over and check you, and we'll just see where you're at. And she got off at 8 o'clock and was going to drive over. And I remember messaging her and being like, my contractions are so, mind you, she's had 2 home births. I was like, my contractions are so strong. I don't know how you did this at home. I was like, I I can't do it. I was like, I'm going to the hospital. So got into the car. My husband helped me. I remember having a really strong contraction outside of the car, holding on to the car, backed out of the driveway, and immediately was like, I'm going to deliver in the car. My husband was like, no, you're not. It's like, I am for sure going to deliver in the car. We got down and we're about 10 minutes
You know your
from,
body.
yeah, we're 10 minutes from the hospital. We get to the very first red light and I'm already pulling off my pants. I'm looking, I can like, looking at the car next to me, I'm like, oh, please just don't look over. And my feet like on the dashboard, I'm like trying to get comfortable, can't get the seatbelt in, so the car's like ding 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 ding. I'm like trying to call. I have worked in labor and delivery and know the labor and delivery unit's number by heart, backwards and forwards. But could I think of it in that moment? I could not think of the number, the direct line. So I'm getting through to the hospital, but the hospital's going, if this is a life-threatening emergency, hang up and call 911. COVID hours, whatever, you know? I was like, this is an emergency, you know? I'm like, could not get through. Just ditched that idea. My husband's about to pull over and start. He's like, I'm just going to pull over in Starbucks. We'll just call 911. The fire department will come. I'm like, please don't pull over. Just keep driving. I was like, let's just see how far we can get. You know, worst case scenario, we'll just pull over on the freeway, like, and deliver the baby. I don't know. Like, I just, you know, the amount of time that it would have taken for the fire department to get to me, I knew that this baby was going to come no matter what. So we're like driving on the freeway. At that point, like with the contraction, I can feel the baby coming down. And I was like almost pretty much holding in the head at that point. Like I knew I was definitely probably 10 centimeters, just like praying that we could get to the hospital. And so thankfully it was night. It was a Friday night, but it was about like 8:30 p.m. at this time. So thankfully traffic wasn't bad. We were able to get like off the freeway, get to the hospital. I remember turning onto like the hospital street and my husband be like, okay, when we get there, what do I do? Do I carry you? And I was like, no. I was like, just pull into valet, run in and tell the nurses your wife's delivering in the car. So and my husband's not a medical person at all. He works in real estate finance. Like this is not his forte. Although he's heard many, many stories from me working in labor and delivery. But so he does that. We pull into valet. Thankfully, there was just no one around because as soon as he ran in to get the nurses, I just kind of flew open the front door. I had no, like, I was just on display and and Hayden was just, and so the very first nurse that ran out, she was like, do you have I was like, this baby's coming. She was like, do you have a blanket or a towel or anything? And I had a towel because I was using it because my water was dripping everywhere. But we also just happened to have a blanket in the car. And my husband, because my husband was about to take off his sweatshirt and just like throw his sweatshirt at us. But we got a blanket and I was like, as soon as I move my hand, this baby's coming. And she's like, okay, let's do it. And just left, you know, pulled back my hand, baby came out screaming, crying, and we delivered. And then the on-call doctor came running out and cut the cord in the car and kind of just hung out there for a little bit. That like looked at the nurse was like, oh, what time is it? And we're like, oh, 8:40 or whatever. And then like later on I was like, oh yeah, my car clock is like a couple minutes fast, like he probably, you know. But I was like surprised, you know, like when you're like in you're just not even thinking about, and as nurses too, when we run out to a car, we're not like, oh, what was time of delivery at birth? Usually we're just like making it up. But yeah, so delivered in the car. And then they brought me, I transferred into like a bed, wheelchair, whatever. They brought me into a room and then did the rest of the delivery of the placenta and everything else in one of the L&D rooms. But yeah, just super fast. So like start to finish was probably an hour, almost exactly an hour. Everyone's like, how did you not know? And even my husband's like, you're just so stubborn. You probably were having contractions all day. But literally, they just really came on so strong. And I can pretty like say I probably only had maybe like 10, I would say 10 really strong contractions before delivering. And you just do it. Like everyone's like, thank goodness you're a midwife and you're a labor and delivery nurse and you knew what to do. But I always say, like, anyone in that situation would have done the same exact thing because when a baby's coming regardless. And there's really, I even, I thought about this like weeks after. I have a BOA kit that like an expired BOA kit that our manager was like, "Oh, if anyone wants to put it in your car," because literally my dream has always been like, how if I'm on the road and somebody's delivering and I could pull over and be like, "I have a kit, like I can help you," Like that's my dream. Yeah, yeah, exactly. But in that moment, like I totally didn't even remember that I had that in my car. I would have like had it ready or pulled it out, had no idea. So and I tell my patients all the time, you can literally go with nothing and your body, you figure it out. You find a way and you just go with it. And so yeah, he was my speedy baby.
That's so crazy. If you have
I
a
know.
third
And
one, you could try a home
it was
birth.
also I know, and it was also funny because my doctor that I had for my first baby, obviously I loved and wanted for my second, but she switched hospitals while I was pregnant. So she continued my prenatal care, but my plan was to deliver with whatever doctor was on call, anyways. So it was funny because I texted her right away and was like, I delivered in the car. And she's like, I'm just thankful like, I'm glad to know that I wouldn't have made it either way. And that's like the truth of it. It's like whoever was there was there. And yeah.
And that's what happens. You got your wish. That's so crazy. I have a lesson on precipitous labor because we want to plan for the hospital birth, right? But I also like, okay, I don't really go into home births much because if you're going to have a home birth, you really need to get a whole different type of education with your midwife, with your doula. It's it's similar when it comes to like you're not getting an epidural, so maybe some hypnotherapy, or you want to get into more of like the tools you'll need at home. But I tell them precipitous labor under 4 hours from the first contraction you feel to delivery. And that was definitely a precipitous labor. And the baby doesn't need anything except for you. Just don't cut the cord. and and I tell them, like, have a pad and a blanket in your car at all times, whether your water breaks or whether that baby comes. You have no idea whether it's your first baby, fourth baby. You just have no idea how. Keep the blanket in the car. That's all
Exactly.
you need.
Especially when it's not your first baby. Like it's very rare. I say it's rare, more rare to have a precipitous delivery with your first baby than it is subsequent deliveries, but especially if you had a precipitous delivery with your first, you should definitely be prepared for your second, third, fourth. Usually we say the first babies take the longest, they pave the way. The second babies come quicker. Usually the rule of thumb is half the time that you were in labor with your first, and then the third baby I always say is the curveball baby because you just never know with the third one. Sometimes
I say that
they're
too. The
yeah,
nurses,
they're
we all
just
say that.
totally exactly. And it also depends on how far apart your babies are. Cole and Hayden are exactly 2 years apart. But if there's a larger gap in between pregnancies, then,
Your
sometimes,
body remembers. It has like some muscle
yeah, it
memory.
really
It
does.
has the hormones know what to do. They're like, oh yeah, you want to dilate? Okay, let's do
Let's
that.
let's go from 0 to 100.
Yeah,
Seriously. Yeah. I
insane.
would have loved to know if actually I don't really care, but it would have I never got checked with either of my deliveries or like in the office. One with Cole, I didn't because I wasn't expecting for my water bag to break around 37 weeks. Usually the doctors might check you around the 39 weeks. But with Hayden, there was never a need to check because I wasn't having any signs, no contractions, nothing. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe I
Who
was
knows?
dilated a little bit.
You
I
could have been
wasn't
walking
dilated
around
at
for
all.
weeks
But
at 4 centimeters and
yeah,
never knew. That's what
yeah,
happens
exactly.
sometimes. I know there was a story I always remember. She was on The Bachelor, and she had a precipitous labor for her first. She lives in an apartment building, and she said she got down to the lobby She got in the elevator and she was just like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna have the just like you. Like you just know this baby's coming. I'm holding it in." And she's wobbling and like she made it out of the elevator. She was so happy. But then she's like, she just slowly just started going down into the floor and laid on the floor and like, sorry, this is it. This is as far as I'm going. Lobby. Like they had to call the fire department to like the EMT guys to come and she delivered that baby in the lobby. And she's like, the second baby, she tried again, but she made it to her closet. Uh, Poor thing. She just went right. She's just crawling. She's like, "Where do I go?" And it was like, I think she had clothes in there or something. She probably had a big closet, and she just went right in there, like a little puppy, like a mama dog. It's like
Yeah, I know.
she's gonna.
We had another labor and delivery nurse that we used to work with, and she was the same way. Like she's like, as soon as my water bag breaks, my baby's gonna come. She's like, so by the, I think she has 4 kids, but she's like, by the third or fourth, she was like, as soon as my water bag breaks, I just lay on the floor and call 911 because like that is just gonna happen. So yeah, I guess too, you just get to know your body and your deliveries. Just trust your instincts, I guess, is the best thing to say. And also, I mean, for me, I just not calling. I know a lot of people probably would have called, 911 or pulled over or something, but it's like they're gonna take you to the same place, and I mean, it would. I guess I don't know. It's hard to say. You just have to do what feels right in the moment. For me, it was like, let's just see how far we can go because I knew I would be able to deliver, if we had to, and try to get as close to the hospital so that we could get extra help if we needed to as well.
And you live 10 minutes. If you live 30 minutes, you know,
Yeah, maybe it would have like maybe we would have called and waited and then at least there would be have been extra people in case like the baby needed anything. But usually most of the time when babies come out that fast, they usually come out screaming and crying and vigorous. It's very rare that there's like severe complications unless you're like extremely preterm or,
and you already have high
anything.
risk. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so how do I know I'm in labor? Like we get that question all the time. Like, how am I gonna know I'm in labor? Like you feel contractions, then you're feeling contractions for like 3 weeks because you have prodromal labor, and then or you have one contraction and then who's to know and 10 contractions later the baby's coming. It's sorry, but it's just we can tell you what to look for, but you are so right. We have to trust our instincts and there's that rule of 5-5-1, right? But it's like, that's so general.
Yeah, I always tell my patients too, like, if you can no longer, if you have to stop and breathe through the contractions you're having, you can't hold the conversation, you can't think about food, and you're really not thinking about anything else about except for the contraction that's happening at that moment. Like, that's when you know that, okay, the contractions I'm having are strong. And I didn't have any like little blah contractions. Like the very first contraction I had brought me to tears and I was like breathing through it. So yeah. And then I also just say like, just you'll know, you'll know. It's hard to say and everyone feels pain differently. Some people feel, contraction pain in the front, some in the back. Even the contractions of from when I had Cole, on Pitocin before I got an epidural, the way that those contractions felt were way different than the contractions that I felt with Hayden. Even though they're still contractions, it's just I just felt them completely different. So
So each
each
pregnancy is different too.
different.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Totally.
in general, we'll tend to go faster the second pregnancy a little bit. They may look similar, but that baby is in a different position. That baby is a different size. That baby is a different has a different plan and your body's different. You are not the same person you were 2 years ago. You've gone through things. You've been breastfeeding. You've have different nutrition, different exercises. Like in general, it's so hard. And I know nowadays, with the more women are becoming educated for childbirth, they're like, well, I want to stay home as long as possible because most women would like, well, I shouldn't even say most, I don't know, but a lot of women would like what the same thing you would like, and the same thing that I would have liked, like just to show up 7 centimeters, get the epidural, have the baby,
I
but
know.
it can be quite like a lot. And then how do you know? Like, okay,
Honestly,
how do you
like
know
the best
you're to seven
it
centimeters?
was it was so nice, like not having an IV, never needing the baby to be monitored. Like the amount of times that the nurses have to like come in and just fixing the monitors, trying to get the baby's heart rate on, and to like honestly walking in at 9 centimeters into a hospital can be a little bit chaotic because there's like 3 or 4 nurses trying to work around you, getting a delivery table set up, like trying to get an IV, trying to draw your blood work, trying to get your information. Like, so, like, honestly, it was almost nicer just delivering in the car and then doing everything afterwards while the baby was on my chest than walking in at 9 centimeters, having that chaos, and then delivering. It's hard to say, but yeah, I, yeah. I think the when I tell this story or tell this story of Hayden's birth, I think the question I get the most is like, "What did you do with your car? Like what happened to the car?" Because I got
Yeah.
so many comments like, "Oh, you should name his middle name Carson or Highlander because we drive a Highlander," or I don't know. We got there's so many that people were like commenting on afterwards, but all I say is I'm so thankful I had leather seats and leather mats that we just sprayed down after we got home from the hospital. I mean, this was at like 8:30 p.m. on a Friday night, so it's not like car washes are open. And I mean, my husband's again is not in the medical field, does not love blood, but he stepped up to the plate and helped. The nurses brought him like a bag and some wipes and got most of what they could up, but yeah, he has cloth interior on his car, and we always say, "Thank goodness it happened in my car and not your car," because I
Right?
don't
Get leather. If you have a
know what
kid,
I would have done
it'll
with
it'll take you through toddler times too.
totally, my goodness. So yeah, that was definitely a plus because I've had in the past, I had a patient come in and she delivered in the car, which we thought was her significant other car, but it ended up being her neighbor. Her neighbor was the only one she could get a ride from the hospital to, and I just remember thinking like, I don't know what they're gonna do with that car. Ah.
Sorry.
So yeah, crazy. You got a healthy baby.
Yep.
Ah.
Yep. And a really good story. A really, really good story. Yep. You just never know, you guys, how it's gonna go. I love it. I love that I got to get the full story because I heard a little bit. You've told me a couple of times, just like, you just have to say I delivered in my car in the parking lot. So I'm like, oh my God, I can already, I already know what kind of
I
story
know
that
all
is.
the nurses are like, "Oh, it was like they call it the drive-by delivery." Like, "Oh yeah, it's like you came in through a drive-through, just delivered your baby." I was like, "I should have just kept going, just
Yeah,
drove
I just
back
want to go
up."
straight to postpartum. Thanks.
Yeah. Let me just skip the whole process.
Right?
Like,
We've
yeah.
had moms coming in like literally with the baby in their pants, like as they're
Yes,
like in the
yes,
wheelchair.
yes,
It's
yes.
crazy. And we're just running around trying to, because we're so driven by like what we need to get done to make sure like things are the safest it can be. So let me get an IV, let me get the table set up, let me do all of this. And then like this baby's coming and really we don't have to do anything. I had a patient in Santa Monica that she came in and she was like, don't touch me. Literally, don't touch me. Like everyone tried to get blood, but we didn't know we didn't know who this lady was. I don't think she had prenatal care. If she did, we didn't know about it. She's like, this baby's coming right now. Don't touch me. Wait, okay, put you right in the bed. She didn't let the doctor touch her. She didn't like, I know this is her 5th baby. I know my body. This baby's coming. We didn't even know she wouldn't let us check her. We just had to like, is she okay? Like, and that baby came out. The doctor was only there to catch the baby and put her on her chest. She didn't let him even look for a tear or nothing. She's like, get away from me now. I was, I was like half laughing. I was like, this is kind of great. We didn't have to do anything. I think we set up the table, but he couldn't really do it. Finally, he let her, he was able to clamp the cord and cut it to separate them, but you literally can have your baby with just a blanket and maybe someone to help you catch, make sure, if you can't. But you're okay. And as a nurse, seeing stuff like that made me kind of calm down during those situations. Like, I don't need to have an IV. Like, I'll process what do I do if she starts bleeding too much. But honestly, maybe the less I touch her, if this is going fast, the better. Like, the less she'll stress, like, the more comfortable she'll be. Right? Just we're here. I started to talk lower, like, oh, you're doing awesome. Instead of like, oh my God, Anna. She doesn't
Yeah,
need any of
totally.
that.
I mean, people ask me too, like, how often does that happen? And I'm like, it doesn't happen all that often. Like, I mean, in the, I don't know, I think let's say the last 10 years, I can probably count on my hands, maybe like 5 times we delivered like outside of a room, like say in the lobby, a patient came in the car, or pulled down their leggings and the baby's coming out. But I could say like it's probably happened to me like 5 times, or I've had patients come in like so precipitous that we haven't been able to get them into a
And it
room or
is,
something.
I've noticed now that I started traveling, like working in Glendale, then working at other community colleges, hospitals, just like Glendale. We work with a patient population that is pretty well educated. They're following their prenatal visits very closely. The doctors can really monitor them. There's more inductions and augmentations and just knowledge of when to get there. So I think that helps. When I went to Seattle and then I went to Salinas where the population is like 5, 6, 8 babies. Like in Seattle, I was there for 3 months. I had, I think, 8 BOAs, which is, yeah, birth on delivery. Like, I delivered on my own 8 babies. They were just coming and doctors couldn't make it because so it is a patient, and a lot of them are, we don't know anything about them, or they're coming in off the street like, "This baby's coming." And we're like, "Well, how long have you been laboring?" And, we have no idea. So I think I miss Glendale. But I'm in Ventura now, and I love it because it's the same, but it's a county hospital, so we'll get a little bit of everything, but it is rare, I agree, for the most part.
Yeah.
But be prepared because anything can happen. Have a blanket in your car
Yeah, and
and
honestly, the only reason why we had a blanket in the car is because I had kidney stones really bad around 35, 36 weeks with Hayden, and where I had to actually be hospitalized. And at the time, they weren't letting kids in to the hospital, and it was in the middle of the night. So Anthony was in the car with our first baby and using a blanket. They had a blanket, and we just left that blanket in the car. That's literally the only reason why I had a blanket, because otherwise I would have used his sweatshirt or my pants that I had taken
yeah,
off. Like, I don't, just like
yeah,
use whatever you have. You just be
yes,
creative.
yeah.
uh,
If you have a
and you just
dress
put the
on, flip it over.
Exactly. Just keep the baby warm, put the baby skin to skin. Like, that's where the baby's going to get the most warmth. Try to cover the head if you can. Babies lose heat the most through their head. So, and especially if they're wet. So, trying to dry their head, put the baby skin to skin. And then that's it. That's really all you have to do, because the cord and the placenta, everything can just stay there until you get to a place where you can actually deliver that. And if that comes out too, that's fine too. If the cord and placenta, everything's still attached, totally fine.
Well, this was awesome. I mean, I would go into more midwifery stuff, but I love that birth story. I think we'll just leave it at that, and then maybe I can invite you back when we start talking more about like prenatal care, end of pregnancy, because I'd love to dive into that stuff. You have so much knowledge, and you're so sweet, and I love chatting with you. And but I had to hear this birth story, 1,000%.
So fun. I know. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever have thought I would deliver or be able to say I delivered in the car. And it is nice now, like talking with patients, because I kind of have two different birth stories. I kind of have, what it's like to be in the hospital and have a bunch of interventions done, still ending out with a vaginal delivery, but then also having a completely like physiologic birth where your body just takes over and you just birth a baby with absolutely nothing. So it's nice actually to have two different perspectives for sure.
Totally. What a dream. That's good for you. Congratulations. I
Thank
love it.
you.
Thank you for coming to the podcast and chatting with me and telling me your birth story.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. I hope you guys enjoyed her story as much as I did. I'm a labor and delivery nurse, so I find this super exciting, like delivering on the front lawn or your car or the store, just craziness. But I have a moment of clarity when I hear stories like this, and it's basically that you can deliver anywhere. All you really need is you. All your baby needs is you. All you need is your baby and your body and a sense of calm. However, you can find a way to get that. So, if it happens to be in your car, maybe just have a blanket tucked away in the back seat, ready to go, just in case. You just never know. Maybe a couple of pads if your water breaks in the car, too. I always suggest that. These little doggy mats, or we call them chucks, just keep them stored. And trust me, later on, when the baby is delivered, grown, you'll need a blanket once in a while. So just have one in there, just ready to go, just in case. And Sarah is a labor and delivery nurse, so she is more comfortable with the process of birth and delivery. But even her, she kind of blanked out and she forgot certain things. So make sure, if you're not like literally down the street from the hospital or pulling in, have your partner like discuss this beforehand. First of all, understand the route to the hospital, understand where the parking and valet is. So if something like this happens, you know exactly what to do. And then pull over. If you're not right next to the hospital, pull over, call 911, and just focus on baby and mom, getting them warm and keeping them calm. And that's all you really need to do. We as nurses kind of get really, really excited and anxious, and we just turn into go mode. If you come into labor and delivery and you're in transition, if you're close to 10 centimeters and you said the baby is coming, we get you in a room. There's about 4 nurses, more or less, running around, getting everything set up. So it can look a bit chaotic because we feel we need all of these things. We need to get you admitted so that we can do our charting on you. We need to set up the table for the doctor. We need to call the doctor, make sure they're on their way. We need to check your cervix and make sure baby isn't, are you 8 centimeters? Is there the baby right there? We like to know that just to see what kind of pace we're going at. If you don't want your cervix checked, that's fine. We're going to just continue going as is. So don't worry about that. If you're like, the baby's coming, you don't need to check me, that's okay. We'll just go as if the baby's coming, and then if it doesn't come, we relax and we chill back. It's okay. But just know that when you get there, we do a lot of things all at once. And as soon as I realized that the baby only needs mom and the mom can deliver the baby without any of us present, or maybe just a nurse to stay calm with her, that's all she really needs. And once I realized that, yes, I made sure that all those things were getting done for mom and for the doctor, because they'll want certain things completed. And for the hospital, they'll want certain things done, like an IV, blood draw, all of those things. But as soon as I realized, listen, the most important thing, the priority is getting over to mom, holding her hand, telling her she's doing an amazing job, and that I am here for her. We are all here with her, and it's going to be okay. And once I realized that that is the number one thing you do, that is a priority, and that's all she really needs, it just calmed me down so much. And I hope it calms you down too. Just find your nurse, find your partner. Say, can you just come over and hold my hand, or like, let me know everything's going to be okay. Sometimes, unfortunately, if people are running around with their heads cut off, or that's the way it feels, because even if they know exactly what they're doing and their head's not cut off, it may feel like it, like a lot of things are happening all at once. But if you can just ground someone, believe me, you have the power to do this. My mom, she was in the hospital and the doctors would come in and they would just stand over her and she would just say, "Can you sit down?" And I said, no, I'm okay. I'll just keep standing. She's like, "No, please sit down." And as soon as they sat down and got on eye level with her, they relaxed. So unfortunately, sometimes the responsibility is going to end up in your hands too. We're only human. We know our jobs. We're going to make sure that we have everything for your baby and your delivery, but we may miss the most important thing, which is to support you. And that is really, really the priority, what you need. And sometimes, whether it's going to be you or it's going to be your partner or your support person, your friend, your sister, whoever's there with you, they need to like snap their fingers and say, "Hey, could you just come over here and speak with us for a moment? Like look us in the eyes." I laugh because it just seems like at this point in my career, so like obviously we want to do this, but in the hospital system, it's not always like that. So my moment of clarity was that we don't need anything but mom and baby, like need, and you can have your baby and you'll be safe. But if you're in the hospital, know that you will have support there. And if you're a nurse or you're a birth worker, you can take a breath, take a moment, be present, look at the room, look at the mom, look at the partner, give a smile, and be excited. And the baby's coming. Maybe put some gloves on, just in case. I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to My Friends a Nurse presents the Birthling Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it valuable. Before we go, a quick reminder. The information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider for any medical concerns or questions. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us reach more people and continue to bring you great content. Until next time, stay healthy and stay informed.